everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Ellie, I'm a long distance hiker and backpacker, and over the last 2 years I've hiked over 4,000 kilometers with my dog Otto. In the past I've got quite a few questions about hiking with your dog. In today's video I want to share my top 10 tips for thru-hiking with your dog or hiking with your dog in general and everything I've learned over the past 2 years. So let's go! My first tip, it sounds simple and basic, but I think it's really important, and that is to do your research before setting off for the trail. That can be, for example, research about the terrain. Is it suitable for dogs, for your dog? Are there other hikers that have taken their dogs with them on a specific hike? Then also things like regulations. In Scotland, for example, there's an area on the West Highland Way where dogs are banned in the spring month because of the lambing season. So yeah, just check if dogs are allowed in general or if dogs are only allowed on the lead, just these things before setting off. Also in the same category, specific dangers of the trail or the area you're hiking in, like wildlife. For example, we've hiked in the UK last year and adders are pretty common there. It's a venomous snake. It's not really dangerous for people in general, but it can be dangerous for dogs if they are bitten by it or if just they follow a snake in the grass and it tries to protect itself. Or for example, in the area where we live in the south of Germany, there are a lot of wild boar, and yeah, they can be really defensive if you just happen to cross paths with them. So that can be dangerous if you just would let your dog run up to them or something like that. Just some general research about the wildlife that you're maybe encountering on your trail. Then also obviously some basic research thing like the travel regulations. For example, if you're hiking to the UK with a dog, your dog has to have his passport and a rabies vaccination that's up to date, and also a tapeworm treatment. Just these things, and there exists similar regulation for other countries as well. So just make sure to have all the relevant documents with you and just so that you're prepared to enter the country you're hiking in. And lastly, and it's really difficult to plan that specifically, but just as a general reminder, dogs are not allowed everywhere on, for example, on public transport. It's possible that your dog is not allowed at all on specific trains in different countries or buses, or that you have to buy a specific ticket for your dog. Just these things, just keep in mind that dogs may not be allowed everywhere and may also not be allowed in some hotels, generally not in hostels, I feel like, in some Airbnbs or even cafes or restaurants. Just keep that in mind if you're looking for options, just to check if they are dog friendly or if they allow dogs. Then my second tip, especially if you're just starting out hiking with your dog or if you're preparing for a thru-hike with your dog, always start low and build up your mileage. That means that most dogs, unless it's maybe a special breed that's basically bred for long distances, for running, for hiking all the time. But most dogs, like humans, just don't get off the couch and just can walk for miles and miles and days and weeks and weeks. So just keep that in mind. If your dog has never hiked or walked longer distances before, that can take a little while for him to get used to hiking longer distances. So if you're just starting out, start slow and build up your miles, and always make sure to observe your dog. For example, if you're doing 15 miles with your dog and he is knackered for 2 days after that, it probably means that it was too much for your dog, and you just need to up the mileage a bit slower. So just keep that in mind, that your dog needs training too, not just you to get ready for a thru hike, but the same goes for your dog as well. My tip number 3 is know your dog and also your dog's limits. What that means is every dog is different and different dogs have specific issues. For example, Otto is a rescue dog and he's afraid of shooting noises. So that means I always make sure to check the area if there is a military training area nearby, or for example on our last thru hike across the UK, I specifically chose a starting date where I knew there wouldn't be like hunters out in the hills in Scotland, because I knew that hearing shooting noises every day would have re-traumatized him, and he would have had a very hard time, refused to walk, and we probably would have had to cut the trip or go to a different area. So that's just one example. Same goes for the color of the fur, for example. If it's really sunny, Otto struggles a bit more than other dogs, maybe because of the black coat that just heats up more easily. Or something like pre-existing health conditions. For example, Otto with the long back, it's not really great for him to jump off really big or high rocks, so I have to make sure to lift him over, for example. Some dogs just maybe can't walk as far as other dogs, so just make sure to evaluate your dog's needs and your dog's abilities and also limitations as realistically as you possibly can to avoid that you're overdoing it or that your dog struggles on your hike. Then my tip number 4 are commands. Obviously, it's always great if your dog knows some basic commands like staying close to you or obviously sit, then the recall command that you can let him go off lead if he has a solid recall, or something like don't just run up to other people, other dogs, just these things that make life easier and also make life on trail easier if your dog knows these commands. But I've found that apart from these basic commands, it's really helpful, or it was really helpful for us to have some specific commands that come in handy for hiking. For example, I taught Otto to walk behind me on more exposed, more dangerous terrain, so that he just don't go off anywhere on the sides of the trail, but just stays behind me, so that I can check for tricky areas and just don't have him walk up to probably an issue or something, a dangerous bit on a stretch or something like that. I've just taught him that by using a treat behind my back and just teaching him a command that means that he basically walks behind me in a line. I've used small single trails for that, where he can't go off the sides really, to teach him that, and I kept giving him treats behind my back whenever he just walked behind me to train him that. And another really handy command for us was that he understands what pointing to an object means. For example, if there's a really tricky bit, or if we're on a light scramble or something like that, he understands that if I point on something, that it means that he has to go there, and that way I can basically lead him up a little scramble or up the rocks. And I just trained that by placing smaller objects like cushions, something like that, and just pointing on those and just basically teaching him to go up there and going from there to the next one, etc. And another command that I think is sometimes overlooked, and I've got a lot of questions about that, is making sure that your dog is comfortable if you're not there, especially if you're hiking alone, like I did. If I have to go into a pharmacy, a supermarket, and I even had to go to the hospital, obviously your dog most likely cannot come with you. So make sure to train him that he's comfortable staying alone and just doesn't panic or is really stressed out by that. I think what you want to do is just making sure that if your dog is tied outside a supermarket, for example, that he's used to waiting for you and that he knows that you will always come back. Same, for example, if you're on a campsite, so that your dog can stay either outside the showers and wait for you, or even Otto usually stays in the tent because I want him to rest and sleep. And the tent is, I close up the tent and he's very comfortable staying in there. He doesn't panic or anything. He knows that I will always come back. And what I start to do is use a specific way of saying goodbye to him, and I always use the same phrase, and also I try to use the same tone, so that after a while he realizes, obviously he doesn't really understand the words, but he can connect the fact that I'm going, but coming back with the phrase, and that he knows if I'm saying that, it means that I will leave him for a short while and then come back, and that really helped. And Otto's doing really great now and just waits and just sleeps in the tent when I go to the shower on a campsite, for example. Then tip number 5 is gear for your dog. Obviously you can spend a lot of money on that, but in my opinion you don't actually need that much stuff for your dog. My favorites and things that I always pack, the first thing obviously is a harness that I think it's really great. Make sure that it's well fitted so that it doesn't slide to the front and get stuck under the armpit to prevent shaving. And I also make sure to add a tag with his name and my details on the back on it, in case obviously he would get lost. Then the second part is a lead. I really like those ones that extract a little bit, just to buffer, for example, if your dog is walking downhill and he's a bit faster than you, just so that he doesn't run into the lead and gets pulled back, but just something to soften that pull back, if that makes sense. So yeah, really like using one of those. Then I always take his pet passport with me, where there's a record of all his vaccinations and other treatments that he's had, and also obviously his microchip numbers on that too. Then things that I luckily didn't have to use that often so far, but that I always bring is some paw cream. It's made from natural ingredients just to prevent sore paws. I don't use it that often because Otto has really, from all the training, he has really like toughened paws, so he usually doesn't need it, but I always bring it just in case he would develop a hotspot or something. Same for the booties that I'm always bringing for him. I think they are normally for sled dogs, but I always bring a couple, like 4, for emergencies. For example, if his paw would be open, or if he would have a cut in his paw, just something like that. If I would have to apply a band-aid or a bandage so that would stay on, and yeah, just something like that. Then next up is a muzzle. That's always helpful for example, if there's a medical emergency, but also it's required in some countries for public transport, so that's always something that I think it's important too. And then if we're talking longer hikes or overnight trips even, Otto has his own sleep system, which is basically just a piece of closed cell foam mat, the Thermostat Sea Light, and I just cut out a little piece for him. And he also, depending on the temperatures, he either has a fleece jumper that I can just put over, and he also has a small synthetic quilt that can also double as a top quilt for him that I can just put around him. And if it's really cold, he just wears both. But yeah, if your dog has not a really thick fur or is not used to colder temperatures, I think that it's really great to have a little bit of a sleep system for your dog too. And the last 2 items that I think are really useful if you're hiking with the dog are a rain jacket and a small lightweight towel for your dog. Especially if your dog sleeps in the tent with you, it's really great to have either a rain jacket to just prevent the fur from being completely soaked, and or even both, a small lightweight towel just to dry your dog a little bit, to prevent that he's getting cold, and also to avoid having a lot of moisture in your tent during the night. So I think that's really useful. You probably don't need it for hiking. You can also go without these, but for me personally it's really worth it, and it's really not fun sleeping in a wet tent in the rain with a completely wet dog. So yeah, I'm bringing these. Then tip number 6 is first aid. Same with the gear. I don't think you need that much, but what I always take as a first aid kit for Otto is some gauze, different kinds of gauze, some Leukotape to fix them obviously. Then I also carry a little bit of, that's some sort of cotton that you can use to basically make a bandage around the paws. And basically, if for example there's an issue with the paw, you would use that and small piece of that to just separate the different claws just to make a good and safe band-aid for the paws. Then some elastic wrap if there's an issue, or just to hold this in place. Something that's very, very important, I think, it's a tick remover. Always make sure to bring one. And then I bring some iodine cream, basically, so something that's antiseptic that you can apply, some wound disinfectant, and then something that I always bring too is some diarrhea medicine for him. So that's just these tablets to act some sort of emergency treatment, and some probiotics if, for example, I have to switch his food on the trail, or if his stomach is upset, something like that, just something to help his digestive system, I guess. So yeah, just some probiotics. And then additionally to that, I'm also taking a couple of painkillers with me that I'm using if I need to, but that are also safe for Otto to use. So if you're taking any medication that's normally for humans, just make sure they are safe for dogs. So maybe check with your vet before setting off to ask about the dosage of a specific pain med, if it's safe for dogs, etc., etc. Quite a few medications are safe for dogs too, but not everything. And related to that, another tip is just to do a little bit of research on dog first aid. Ask your vet, for example, or I've watched a couple of videos and asked my vet about that, how to, for example, make a bandage if the paw, for example, is injured, how to make sure to wrap it up properly, so to say. Try to gather a little bit of information on that if there's an emergency, so that you know what to do and how to handle a situation. And same for thinking about what you would do in an emergency. For example, if you would need to carry your dog out from a hill, from a mountain, back to civilization. Think about and also practice how you would carry your dog. Otto is not a big dog, so I can manage to carry him quite easily. But for bigger dogs, you would probably need something like a sling or something, and there are specific carrier systems for emergencies. Think about the worst case, even if we all hope that it never comes to that, but it helps to be prepared and to know what you would do in a specific emergency situation. Okay, these tips that I've shared so far were all tips or things that you probably might consider before setting off for the trail, like research, getting prepared and everything. Now I've got a few more tips to share with you for why you're on the trail. First off, and that's tip number 7, is food. If we are out hiking, we burn a lot more calories, and the same goes for our dogs. So it's probably necessary that you adjust the portions. Over the last 3 years, I found that Otto usually eats about 30% more when we're out on the trail than he would eat at home. And I also give him a lot more snacks. I always make sure that he's having something for lunch too, like there's some sort of like protein energy bars for dogs, something that that's easy to carry, that doesn't weigh a lot, but it's really high in calories. Or he gets something like a piece of a banana, something like that, just a little bit of snack to keep his energy level high. Then related to that, always make sure that your dog is well hydrated, especially if you're feeding kibble, which is really, I think, a lightweight and good option for on the trail, because it doesn't go bad. It's relatively lightweight compared to other food things, but obviously there's not a lot of moisture in it, and it's really dry. So what I usually do is, if Otto's having kibble on the trail, I always soak it in a little bit of water, just to make sure that he's well hydrated before we set off, or if before he goes to bed at night. Then tip number 8 on the trail, and that's something that I do every night and I don't skip it ever, and I think it's really, really important, is to check your dog every night for ticks, brush through the coat, and also check for any weird things going on, like hot spots. Always check the pads on his paw, check if there's any like swelling at joints, or just anything really that's not normal, and take your time to really thoroughly check your dog to make sure that he's okay. I didn't do it on my very first hike, my very first longer hike with him a few years back, and that resulted in Otto limping because apparently his pet was sore. He wasn't used to hiking, and yeah, that was really painful for him. Because these things, they start out really small, but they can get really big, and that can cause a lot of pain and make you stop the hike, basically. Because if it's a really big hotspot or even an open pad, that can take several days to heal up completely, and during that time you can't hike. So yeah, that's something that's very important. Always make sure to check your dog at least once a day. Then tip number 9, that goes a little bit in the same direction, is really observe your dog and always be prepared to adjust your plans, because it's not, if you're hiking with the dog, it's not just about you. Your dog also has like limitation, or it's maybe too much on a specific day. So always really observe and realistically observe your dog, and make sure that he's doing okay. Make sure to evaluate his overall physical state and just how he's doing in general, and always be prepared to adjust your plans. For me personally, that means that I don't plan too much ahead. For example, if you're on the trail and I book an accommodation that's 2 weeks from now, and I really want to go there because it's booked, it's maybe not refundable, I'm more likely to push through and to maybe ignore signs that Otto's maybe tired or we're just doing too much. And obviously that's not great, but it can happen if we have something in mind where we want to go or where we need to be on a specific day. So my advice would be not to plan too much ahead, because you're more likely to just miss things that aren't great with your dog. Only plan maybe a couple of days ahead the most, and just see where it goes, because oftentimes, as I said, you just are going to change your plans, and that's completely normal if you're hiking with the dog. And my last tip number 10, is create a routine for your dog. Because if we are out hiking, we are in new places, new areas every day, we're meeting lots of new people, and that can be really stressful for your dog, because there's always something new. There's not a lot of things that are stable, and dogs oftentimes really like their routines, and they like to know what's happening, what's going on. So being in a new environment all the time can be really stressful. And what I started early on, basically from our first long distance hike, is that I've implemented a specific routine if we are at camp. So basically, if we are arriving somewhere and the hiking day is over, I put up the tent, then I always brush his fur and check for hot spots and ticks. And after that, he always gets a bigger treat, like a chewing bone thing. And that way, I think he can connect getting the treat with, okay, we're done for the day, I can settle down, I can rest, I can go to sleep. And that really helped a lot, I think, because he knows what's happening, he knows what to expect. If I go to the shower, he knows, okay, we're done, I don't have to stay on alert because there's something else, maybe we're packing up, going somewhere else. And I think that's a really nice thing, so that he has a bit of a routine, so that he can anticipate what's coming next, what's expected from him. And yeah, that really helped a lot for us, and I think it's a really nice thing to do. Okay, these were my top 10 tips that I hope were useful for you. If I would summarize it, everything that I said in this video in one phrase, it would be hike your dog's hike. I know this sounds weird, but I think it's actually the truth to do it like responsibly for your dog to enjoy the hike as well. Because at the end of the day, it's not our dogs that chose to do a longer hike, a through hike. We chose it, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that our dogs are comfortable, that we are not overdoing it for them. And for me, that means that Otto's needs are very high up my priority list. So I always make sure to check that he's comfortable, that I'm not doing too much, etc. And I really don't want to put you off, but I want to be honest on what to expect if you're hiking with a dog, because it can mean, and it probably will mean, making sacrifices and even missing out on things. For example, if I've had a couple of times where I was hiking in a group and everyone was going to a hostel, but the hostel didn't allow dogs and I wasn't allowed to camp outside in the garden. So what that meant was everyone else was staying somewhere and I had to hike on and stay somewhere else, not being with a group that I wanted to be with maybe for a day or two. Or same if you're hiking with people that have a faster pace as your dog has, probably. That means that you will eventually fall behind and they will hike on. So you very likely will get into a situation where you will have to make sacrifice in order for your dog to be comfortable. And that's what I mean by hike your dog's hike, because it's just not, that's something to keep in mind and to realistically think about whether you want to do that or not, because if you want your dog to be comfortable, it's basically putting his needs above your own, basically. That's how I see it, how I feel it, and that's my experience after 2 years of hiking with the dog for thousands of kilometers. I know a lot of what I said in this video sounds like quite a bit of work and more planning and making sacrifices, but that being said, I just want to end this video by saying it's even though it takes quite a bit of effort to hike with your dog or a long distance hike with your dog, but it's so worth it because it's so nice to share this adventure with your dog, to make memories together, to strengthen your bond, which is really so great how this experience and adventure can really strengthen your relationship. And that's one of the greatest things, seeing your dog enjoying new areas instead of the same old walk around the block or in your local area. And it's something that's really nice and a really natural way to live with your dog, not just he's waiting for you to be done working to get out for a little walk, but just to spend all day, every day together. In my opinion, it's so worth it, so definitely give it a try if you're not hiking with your dog yet. This was it for today's video. I really hope you've enjoyed it and that you found the tips and advice helpful. If there's anything else that you want to know, or if there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I will try my best and answer those. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!